President Cyril Ramaphosa hitting out at the U.S. President Donald Trump's latest tirade after the U.S. President said he would exclude South Africa, he would exclude us from the next G20 summit. It's being held in Miami. Ramaphosa says Trump's decision is regrettable. The U.S. President took to his own Truth social media platform late yesterday, repeated a baseless claim of genocide against Afrikaans people. Trump himself boycotted the G20 summit here over the weekend over the same claims, which are not based on fact. In a statement, Ramaphosa has reaffirmed South Africa's right to participate in global forums and has rebuked repeated insults from the U.S. government. Newzroom Afrika's senior political reporter Ziyanda Ngobo spoke to the presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya.
Well, the fallout from South Africa's successful G20 leaders summit this last weekend continues, with United States President Donald Trump threatening to exclude South Africa from next year's gathering. He says this is because the South African government is continuing to kill white people and nothing is being done about it. But yesterday, the South African presidency pushing back, saying that South Africa is a sovereign state and that Trump's comments are regrettable. Let's bring in the presidency spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya. Thanks for your time. I mean, I've been going through some of the comments that Trump has made, and it's very clear, you and I were in Washington in May, that whatever the South African government says, Trump and his government are not willing to listen.
Indeed, Ziyanda. In fact, we are now focusing on what we call functional aspects of the relationship, business to business, engagements with civil society from the United States, people-to-people exchanges, and accepting that at the highest level of political leadership between the U.S. and South Africa, we may not be able to reset the relationship as we had intended, despite numerous attempts and efforts to reset the relationship.
I mean, a low-key handover did take place, I think it was on Monday, where, as the International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola had promised, that at the level at which the United States Embassy meets us, we will meet them at the same level of respect. But legally speaking, Mr. Magwenya, Trump can't exclude you. South Africa is a G20 member in its own right.
Well, his action is actually threatening to collapse the G20 because it goes against the values and the principles of the G20. South Africa is one of the founding members of the G20. It will require consensus amongst the members to either uninvite a country or invite a country. You will recall in 2022 there were attempts to remove Russia. Those attempts did not succeed because they couldn't find consensus. Equally now, we doubt that, in fact, not that we doubt, President Trump will not find any consensus around uninviting South Africa.
Speaking of consensus, I mean, one of the greatest successes that have been spoken about our G20 presidency is how the international community, in fact, other G20 members stood shoulder to shoulder with South Africa when the United States, in particular Donald Trump, was trying to bully us. What expectations does the president and the South African government have in pushing back again against this latest attempt? I mean, there's speculation that by the time that summit is held in Miami, no one will be there.
Well, already we've seen a public expression of support from the German ambassador to South Africa. Ideally, would love to see more voices coming out, particularly from the African Union. But be that as it may, Ziyanda, what we're focusing on now is working with partners such as France and the UK in ensuring that we do not lose the momentum coming out of this G20 that was held here, going into future iterations of the G20. France is the G7 president. They've already extended an invite to South Africa. President Macron has already undertaken that commitment to ensure that that momentum is not lost. We strongly believe that the UK will adopt a similar stance in terms of ensuring that the substance of our G20 in terms of outcomes is not lost. And so we may have to look beyond 2026 and look at how we constructively move forward with the other partners within the grouping.
Speaking of moving beyond, 2026, there is a troika. I mean, there are systems within G20 that exist, and the troika includes rather the past, the present, and the future presidency of the G20, which would be South Africa, the United States, and the UK for 2027. So if Trump is threatening to say, well, you can't come to Miami, are you trying to, what's your understanding of that? Does it mean that the troika is going to collapse because you still need to form part of the preparatory processes for next year's summit?
There's a first meeting on the 16th of December of the Sherpas that is scheduled to take place in Washington. We do not know what will happen with respect to our Sherpa and the Sioux Sherpas that are expected to attend that meeting. We suspect there may be denied entry, there may be refused visas. We will deal with that occurrence when it does occur. Suffice to say, we are looking at beyond the US-led G20. It's not going to be helpful for us to spend a lot of energy begging to be admitted into the US when there's no desire to do so. What gives us comfort is that we are aligned with all of our partners with the outcomes of this G20 and going forward. And so we'll have to look at ways of circumventing the sort of temporary blip that the US is going to cause in the process.
I mean, how temporary is it really, Mr. Magwenya? I was opening up the declaration because in paragraph 121, this declaration, which was adopted with consensus at the recent summit, it says, we reiterate our commitment to the G20 as the premier forum for international economic cooperation, and it's continued, in the spirit of multilateralism. And then in the next paragraph, it says, we thank South Africa for its leadership this year. We commit to working together under the United States presidency in 2026 and meeting again in the United Kingdom in 2027 and the Republic of Korea in 2028. So it's very clear that even the South African government did almost throw, or wave the white flag to say we remain committed. But it's very clear that Trump is still meting out transactional diplomacy. How else can this forum navigate this space?
Well, two things there. One, we've seen that President Trump doesn't conform to established norms of diplomatic engagements. And so we don't think anything is going to change with respect to the G20. The announcement yesterday already demonstrates that disregard of those established norms of diplomatic courtesies as well as engagements. Secondly, in our statement, we did make a call to G20 members to reaffirm all of these principles and values that you've just alluded to that are expressed in the declaration. And so we will see, or rather we'll wait to see how other members of the G20 respond in this regard.
And what's the president had to say about all of this? Because in many aspects leading up to the summit, I think the United States government got a bit personal. They said the president was running his mouth. I can tell you that many South Africans found that deeply offensive.
Well, President Ramaphosa feels that he's done his best to reach out to President Trump. He's done his best to put the country's interest before everything and anything else, considering the importance of the trade relationship with the U.S. And he feels that he's made enough attempts to get a reset of the diplomatic relationship. However, at a certain point, you have to then accept the reality before you. And that reality is that we may not be able to achieve that reset. Hence, we now want to focus on other functional aspects of the relationship, understanding that President Trump is not going to be leading the U.S. forever.
Absolutely. Vincent Magwenya, spokesperson for the presidency, just speaking to us about the latest fallout and the response from U.S. President Donald Trump releasing on his Truth Social platform that South Africa will not be invited to the summit next year, and that because the South African government didn't allow a delegation from the United States to fetch that gavel, that there are consequences from that, but very clear that the international community is still standing shoulder to shoulder with our nation in affirming its sovereignty and standing up to the Trump administration.